What's up, guys? Welcome to the penultimate episode of the Succession Companion Podcast presented by The Disorderly. Head over to thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. Disorderly Media on Twitter, Disorderly ENT on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. So this is Season 1, Episode 6, entitled Whose Side Are You On? So big episode as far as turning points go. It's time for the big vote of no confidence that's been building pretty much since episode 1. We'll get to the dynamic of that in a moment, but first I just wanted to share my thoughts on the episode and the season so far, or series so far, rather. So basically I've been pooping on this season for the first half of it. I think that, I had some questions as to where the show is going. I don't know how I felt about the characters or the character dynamics or the subplots or anything. I was just like, besides Greg, who's been a through line of just pure, raw entertainment in its finest form, besides him, I really was torn on how I felt about this show. I don't know if I've ever... I'll say this. It's not like my favorite all-time show now, but I do love it now. Like, it took a real hard turn. I forget, it's documented somewhere on the podcast, but episode 3 or maybe even 4. I think 4 was the first time I really was like, all right, man, this show's getting good. And then 5 was also really good. And then this episode was excellent. I don't know, man. I feel like this show has done a complete 180 for me. I'm enjoying it. I really like it now. I mean, it's become clear that the entire show is just about control. And this episode showed how much of what we experience in life is beyond our control, which is kind of the opposite. That's the pairing with control, is that sometimes there's things that you can't control because, you can plan out all you want, but people behave unpredictably. There's terrorist threats and traffic caused by an evacuation. That causes Kendall to run late for this huge meeting and not present it in the way he wanted to. This is all beyond his control. So there's literally a struggle of the entire family fighting for control of this company and whatever little pockets of power they can get their hands on and whatever. But at the same time, there are forces of nature and things that are bigger than that, things that an individual can't control and has to basically deal with and adapt. And even look at Logan with him getting sick. He's got all this power and control. He's reduced to this weak, helpless old man because, we all have to deal with this ticking clock that is life. And it's just an interesting look at everything, and it's really fascinating to look at this theme through the scope of this billionaire family dynamic. It's actually a really cool way of discussing these themes and these philosophies of life and control and power and all this stuff, but they're doing it through a present day. It's very Shakespearean with the overthrow and all this stuff, and they're doing it through present day Wall Street or Fortune 500 company. It's cool. I really enjoy it. So let me just start, because it is a little confusing if you're, going through one time. Let me just start with the dynamic of this vote. Who's voting, which way, what people were anticipated to vote which way, whatever. So Stewie, who is Kendall's friend, the kind of sleazy one that he brings in to, deal with the debt problem or whatever, he's in. So he's going to vote yes, as far as saying that Logan is no longer competent to run this company. So he's in. Same with Asha, who is... Well, she's described as Kendall's little pet, but she's basically, somebody on the board who Kendall kind of has under his thumb. So she says she's also in. So they say, that's what they say originally. The other quote-unquote automatics are Kendall, Roman, who's Kendall's brother, also the CFO, or COO? I don't know. He's second in command under Kendall. And Frank, who formerly held Roman's position and has kind of been bumped out, but he's still on the board, so he's still in a leadership role. They also are all going to vote no confidence. You have 3 people named Paul, Dewey, and Dadu who are all old school guys, so they're automatic no votes. They're gonna vote against the vote of no confidence. In the mysteries are our Uncle Ewan, who he didn't seem to respond very enthusiastically when the idea was brought up to him at Thanksgiving. I think they think that he's not going to show up, but it turns out he does. And Lawrence, who hates Kendall. Lawrence is the guy who has the little company that they hire in the first episode, the Asian guy who just despises Kendall. So he's another mystery, because obviously he wants to vote for progress, but he hates Kendall. So in order to sway these swing votes, Roman goes to talk to Lawrence, because obviously they're both young and whatever, and he hates Kendall, so maybe he can sway him. And it actually works. He convinces him, or so he says. Kendall makes a last-minute trip to Long Island to convince Alola to vote yes. She's an older, sort of bedridden board member, so he goes to convince her to say yes. But can't fly back because there's a terrorist threat and the skies are closed and whatever, so that ties in as well. But that's why he was late. But nevertheless, he kicks off the vote over the phone because he can't be there in person. And Logan refused to leave the room, though he's supposed to, because he's sick. He says, I'm an old man, just vote. And he's kind of using his bullying tactics to get through this entire process. But regardless, the vote is underway. So Kendall votes yes, Frank votes yes, Asha votes yes. Stewie refuses to vote and abstains, Paul, Dewey, and Dadu vote no. Alola votes in and votes yes over the phone. So obviously, whatever Kendall said to her, which we don't see, we see it, we don't hear it. Whatever he says to her obviously worked. Ewan votes no, despite hating his brother. That makes it 4-4. Lawrence abstains, and there's only one person left, Roman, who is an automatic. But Roman's also kind of a weak guy, where he talks a big game. He's tough when he's with people. Like when he's one-on-one with his father, he's kind of a shriveling suck-up. When he's one-on-one with Kendall, he kind of takes a backseat a little bit. He talks a big game, but I think if Kendall was there, if he wasn't late, I think Kendall would have been able to convince him to, stay strong. Alas, Kendall is not there in time. Logan basically bullies. I don't even think Roman really gives an answer, but Logan basically bullies his son into voting against. So that's it. 5-4 loss. Just as this happens, Kendall comes into the room and his dad basically says, "This is your best shot. You try to kill me. I'm trying to steer the tanker." There's always crazy dramatic lines and whatever. And he fires all the people that voted against him. So that's where we stand at the end of this episode. We have Kendall basically on a sidewalk just looking crazy and distraught and lost, and he doesn't know what to do with his life. So heading into this finale, I really don't know exactly what direction this is going to go in. If I had to predict, and this is based on nothing other than just the trends I see, but if I had to predict what was going to happen next, I feel like something else is going to happen with Logan's health, whether he, actually dies or has another stroke or something, because it seems like every time we see him, a shadow of his old self where he has his power, he has his control, he ends up sort of reverting back to seeing his own mortality, and you see him as an old man who's struggling or whatever. We've seen that a lot. Like when he bought the TV show package and then immediately started spilling his coffee. So the fact that he just did this huge power move where he's basically seized control of the company again and won the battle, for that then to be coupled with him having another health scare, maybe even death, I feel like that would fit the the trajectory of the show so far. But just to touch on other things that happened in the episode, all this time while the maneuverings going on with the voting, Logan is going to meet with the president of the United States, only to find out that he got snubbed, or so he thinks, because there's a terrorist threat. So he thinks he got blown off. Turns out, because they closed the airspace, that the terrorist threat was actually legit. But he's basically I can't believe I have to fly to him. I can't believe he's going to blow me off. And we're talking about the president of the United States. This is kind of giving you some insight into Logan's ego and what he thinks he deserves as far as respect and things like that. But he returns to the office for the overthrow attempt, beats it using his patented bullying tactics that we kind of touched on before, and then basically finishes the episode by snubbing the president back. I mean, not really. He talks to him, they have a nice conversation, but first he was like, tell him, hold on a second, and he makes him wait on the phone, the president. So that kind of shows his pettiness, his ego, things that basically got him to where he is today and got the company to where it is today. It's just really evident how much raw power Logan has throughout this episode, because while his kids are sort of scurrying around trying to scheme their way to the throne and trying to persuade people to vote the way they want them to vote, he just seems to naturally have this ability to intimidate and rule. You see it in the boardroom. You see people who said they're going to vote yes back out. You see Roman basically crumble under the pressure. It actually says a lot about second-generation business owners in general. There's usually this bulldog that has to carve the path in the first place, and then the kids who didn't they grew up with this business already established, and in this case they grew up very rich, and do they really have what it takes to lead this company once Logan's gone? I think that's the question for future seasons if I had to guess, but it's just interesting. But the most interesting part of the episode for me was actually the conversation between Logan and Kendall when he goes over there for dinner. So they're sitting there, they're eating Big Macs with the basketball game on, and you can see a glimpse of a normal father-son relationship, which we haven't really seen the entire episode. This is him just watching the game with his dad and eating fast food, and it's a very relatable scene. There's no power struggles or backstabbing or anything like that. And it's interesting because we get this glimpse into this world, what could have been between them had there not been all this other stuff going on. And we get this glimpse right before basically all hell breaks loose with this vote and everything. And things are likely to change between Kendall and Logan forever. So it's interesting that they give us this flash just to see basically what's being taken away, when this dynamic changes. Also, he implies that Marsha's playing her own game. And we don't know what Marsha's doing. So you see Marsha in this episode, and she's doing something. She invites Logan over for dinner. Turns out she said that Logan invites Kendall over. She said that Logan wants to have dinner with you, Kendall, and then it seems like Logan had nothing to do with that invitation. Granted, his brain is a little weird, so it's possible that he did and forgot, but it seems like Marsha's got something up her sleeve. We don't know where she is. She's gone. She's all dressed up, so I don't know what she's planning, but I'm sure we'll find out in the next episode. So that was all very interesting to me as well. And finally, our weekly Tom and Greg update. So Tom beats the huge, terrible cruise ship scandal. or at least allegedly, that problem has gone away, and he decides to celebrate by teaching Greg how to act like a rich person. Very, very funny. My favorite line personally, when they're going to dinner the first time, he says, "When I first had the monkfish, I thought I was going to shit, puke, and cum all at once." To which Greg replies, "Sounds delicious." Like, just the little dialogue is hilarious to me. Meanwhile, Shiv seems to be struggling to balance the different paths of her life, so she's flirting with having an affair, sort of. Like, she's catched up with an old fling who also happens to be in the same career, so it's under the guise of a business meeting, but they're crossing some emotional lines, never physical, but, it's interesting what she's doing, because she can't seem to decide which candidate to go back, because she can't seem to decide which candidate to back after the dude from the Almost Affair tells her she should jump ship. She's also basically ignoring Tom's attempts to get into the wedding planning, and, you would expect her to be more excited about it, so she's clearly trapped between two worlds right now. And by the way, I wonder how much of this show is improv, because Adam McKay and Will Ferrell, right? So that's sort of an improv. Like Step Brothers, I heard a lot of the lines that are improv, and there's two specific moments in this that I feel like were improv. One, Tom has a black eye because he from sex with Shiv, but it doesn't really tie into the episode. They work a scene in there. I almost wonder if the actor had a black eye and they had to figure out how to work around that rather than covering it up with makeup. I'd be very interested to know. I'm sure that information's out there somewhere, but I feel like it doesn't, unless that ties in later. I feel like that black eye was like maybe just they're just making the best out of whatever real life situation the actor had going on. And then Greg, he's talking to Tom, and he said he got paid, and then the lights start to flicker, and he's like, he makes some comment about, unlike, I guess these guys aren't paying the light bills over here, and it sounded so off the cuff and improv and almost out of Greg's character. I wonder if that was an improv line by the actor as well, but who knows? Anyway, it's hot as hell in here again. I'm doing this in my car on my lunch break. This happens, I feel like every week now. That's why the sound quality is a little tinnier, but you know what? I gotta do what I can here. I'm sweating my ass off. So I'll get through this quick. Go to thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. Disorderly Media on Twitter. Disorderly ENT on Facebook. My name is Nick Rizner. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. And that'll do it for the penultimate episode of Succession. Tune in next week for the Succession Companion Podcast season finale. And, peace, guys.